condo rent prices has dropped. Where and how much? Hi everyone, YiNan here. So we just had the latest rental data from Q3 2024 and we wanted to share with you to better understand what's going on in the condo rental market, and not only for resale condos, but there's also the purpose-built apartment rental data as well. So let's find out what happened, and as investors, what do we have to watch out for? So on the screen, you will see that this is in GTA, the average lease rate, okay, for the past 10 years. Almost. And this is by quarterly data. So the latest data point we have is last summer, okay, Q3 2024. And from that point, you know that in Q4 last year, the rental price keeps going down, right? And right now, in February 2025, it's not that much better either. So Q3 last year was already the peak of recent history. And we compare that against the year before at Q3, you can see there's a drop in price. On the graph, you will see that the average of all type of condos lease rate was 2,790. And the year before, Q3 2023, was 2,961, right? So the very peak of rental prices for condos happened in 23 summer. And there is a significant difference between last summer and the summer before. But if you look at comparing to previous years, if you're comparing to summer 2022, 2,774 comparing to 2,790 is about the same. So right now, our rental price has went back to 2022. Okay, 2023 was the peak. And going further back, then you will see the rental prices were lower, right? This big dip here was 2021, and that's in the middle of COVID. That's when everybody was escaping from condos and nobody was leasing condos, and the price dropped significantly from like $2,500 before to $2,000, right? There's a $500 on average price drop because of COVID. But it quickly recovered after COVID to pre-COVID level in 2022, and then it kept going up since then, right? So some of you might ask, oh, I thought the condo market is slow. Why does the rental market seems to be pretty strong overall? And that is an interesting observation, because on the screen you can see that this is the leased volume, okay? The number of transactions in the leasing market. And you can see that last 10 years, it's an upward trend. There's more and more and more people choose to lease condos. And that is a result of increasing population in Toronto, and also foreign buyers after 2017, it's a lot harder to buy real estate, right? They have to pay tax, and then later on there's a federal ban. There's a lot of students who used to buy a condo when they come here for university. Condos are generally preferred by young people, right? And or retirees. And the students, they cannot buy as easily anymore, so they convert to rental. And there's more younger generation of locals who choose to rent instead of buy as a different lifestyle choice, right? So more money, it's like young people don't want to buy cars anymore. They use Uber, right? They use these rental services to make their life simpler, cheaper, and easier, which is, you know, not always a bad choice. So there's more interest in rental. You may wonder, hey, does that mean there's less people want to buy a condo? And the answer is yes. If you look at this graph, we just added sales volume to the graph, right? The top is lease volume, bottom is sale volume. You can see back then in 2016, 2017, right? There's about the same number of people who choose to buy and rent a condo. But after 2018, 2019, especially after COVID started, there's a lot more people choose to rent and then less people choose to buy, right? It's a generally downward trend for purchase and upward trend for lease. So right now, as of Q3 2024, we have achieved historically high level of lease volume at 18,540. Right? And sale volume has been historically low at only 4,200 transactions of condo purchases in that quarter. So it's almost more than 4 times more transactions in the leasing space than purchase space. Shows you the difference in people's mindset in choosing to rent or buy a condo. And keep in mind, even not that long ago, less than 10 years ago, these people are the same portions. Now there's 4 times more renters than buyers. No wonder there's a lot of politicians, when they make these policies, they tend to favor tenants because, hey, look how many there are, right? Now, where exactly in GTA are these changes happening the most? Let's take a look at the same charts, but let's break it down by year-over-year comparison and by different regions in the GTA. If you look on the screen, you can see that this is basically comparing different condo regions, like CO1 is downtown, right? CO8 is downtown as well. CO1 is the region west of Yonge. CO8 is the region east of Yonge. And you can see Q3 last year comparing to Q3 the year before. Volume-wise, we know that the volume has reached a peak, right? But how much more is actually concentrated in downtown Mississauga? You can see that these downtown in CO1 we have had 4,800 transactions, and the same year before we only had 35, right? So that's a lot more people choose to rent downtown. So that means people are not boycotting downtown. They still like living downtown, they just choosing to rent instead. Same thing for CO8. We had 3,300 transactions in Q3 and only 2,400 leases the year before, right? That's a lot of change. That's like almost 50% more lease volume that's happening in downtown in Q3 last year. And Mississauga had 1,600 transactions versus the year before, 1,300. And North York, you can see there's quite a bit of difference too. There's about 200, 300 more transactions for lease happened in North York comparing to the year before. As you can see that in generally people are choosing to rent, and there's a lot more transactions happening in almost every region, especially downtown Mississauga and North York, right? These are popular tenant choices. Now we also saw at the beginning of the video, price has dropped, right? From Q3 2023 to Q3 2024, there's a price drop about I think $200 per month. Where did those price drop? Which regions? Let's take a look. Okay, on the screen, this is where you're seeing the average lease rate change, okay, lease price change year over year between last year and the year before between these different regions. Which region have the biggest drop in rental lease price? And let's take a look at the biggest droppers, right? CO1, CO8, which dropped about 9%. CO2 is like Annex, Sinclair area, right above north of downtown, and that's a lot of very expensive leases, and they dropped the most because they're probably the most expensive lease, dropped 14%. And then in Midtown and Etobicoke, which is close to downtown, Midtown is north of downtown, Etobicoke is west of downtown, right? Like Mimico and the New Toronto area. And Midtown has dropped about 4%. Etobicoke dropped 5.6%. And then you have North York, right? North York, as you saw, is another popular area. There's a lot of people renting there. But there's also a price drop anywhere between 3.5 to 6%, right? And C14 is the North York east of Yonge. Willowdale East, Norton Brook East, like that's more popular condo area, right? They dropped a bit less than west of Yonge in North York, but in general, North York has dropped similar percentage to Midtown, and Mississauga dropped 3.5% as well. So you can see, aside from downtown, everywhere else the lease rate drop is not too big. North York, sort of east North York, Don Mills, Bayview area, they barely changed. Like the lease price is about the same as the year before. It gives you a sense of, hey, where are the lease rates dropping the most, right? And where it's not changing. So why? Why is downtown having the biggest drop in lease rate? Even though we saw there's more transactions in downtown, like there's more demand, right? There's more people choosing to lease downtown. But why is the lease rate dropping? So let's take a look at demand and supply. Okay, on the screen now you can see this is the chart showing total leased and total listed for lease. Okay, so basically the bottom light blue line is demand, right? How much actually leased, and supply is the top dark blue line, like how many landlords listed their condo for lease. Okay, and you can see that there is a bigger gap in Q3 last year versus recent history, right? There's more landlords putting their condos up for lease than actually leased. So regardless, there's more demand. There's actually a lot more supply as well. The last time we had this much supply was during COVID. So remember, COVID, we had more supply, less demand, and therefore our price has dropped like $500, right? So now the reason we have not dropped $500, we dropped about $200, is because even though we have similar amount of supply, we have more demand than COVID time, right? So therefore our higher demand offset the higher supply, so we have a lesser drop in lease rate. But regardless, when we have this many units for lease, there is going to be a change in price, right? So we understand this is how basic economics works. So if you look at the same chart for downtown, downtown actually had even worse impact during COVID. And if you look at the price change, probably a lot bigger than $500, right? So right now it has not caught up to the COVID level, but still quite high, right? Almost 14,000 total listed. And this is not accumulative. This is just how much was put on the market, right? Inventory is probably even higher than this number. And this is how much were leased. So in downtown, you can see this gap is growing at an even faster rate than other areas. And this is a similar trend to other areas as well. If you look at, for example, North York, C14, you can see there's a bigger gap now than before, right? Which explains the price drop. It's just two different degrees. The smaller markets, the difference absolute number wise is still smaller, right? Like for example, if you look at Markham, right, the 660 to 970, right, like 300 listings different. But downtown, if you look at a CO1, that's almost like 6,000 difference. So that explains why different areas are all kind of encountering a drop in lease price, just two different degrees, because of this supply and demand dynamic has changed a lot, right? So in the current market. So just to show you what's happening in today's rental condo market, and that quite significantly impacts the investors' bottom line, which will impact the ability to afford, keep holding on to their condo or purchasing new condos, and it will affect the sale price as well. In the last video, we talked about the pre-construction market and the resale condo market, and that price gap needs to be closed, but rental prices will also impact all the way there, right? So it's all connected, which is just to show you from different aspects of what's happening and how they're connected and what might happen in the future. Okay, so in the future video, we'll talk about more general economic trends and bigger macroeconomic. If you like this kind of video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel. See you next time. Ciao.